present your work, because presentation is going to be a big part of your work and all that stuff. So make sure you're just kind of taking notes and paying attention to see general expectations for that next project. And general housekeeping things, there is no class next Tuesday, so I will not see you guys for a week. So no class on Tuesday. Take that day off. Hopefully you'll be getting caught up on Illustrator skills, doing some other classwork, and just getting caught up, because after that the project is due on the 7th. So I'll see you guys on Thursday, and that'll just kind of be a last check-in before the project's due. So I would suggest start working on the project over this weekend, at least getting some thumbnails going and things like that. And at least, getting the ball rolling. So then when we go into next week, you can start working on that. And then after we talk about project 2, we will talk a little bit about value contrast, which is kind of the last art concept that I will want to see on, on this project. All right, let's get going. All right, so project 2. Hopefully all the directions are clear here on Canvas. Everything required for the project is right here. Thumbnail sketches, 2 pieces of final art made in Illustrator, reflective essay, well, not quite an essay, basically a paragraph, in all work submitted in a PDF file. So that's what I will be looking for. That's all the components, and I'll kind of go over those here. Project 02. So this project is just really getting you guys used to the creative process that we are going to use for the rest of the quarter. So it's just kind of, the last project 1 was just checking boxes to make sure you could do the basics of Illustrator. This project is checking boxes to make sure that you can kind of follow along with how we are going to do our creative process in this class. And there's like definite steps that you need to follow and how that's all going to work out. And hopefully it will lead to you getting some good final artwork. So the first thing you are going to do, step 1, is do thumbnails. So thumbnails, what do I want to see in your thumbnails? Well, they can be abstract or representational, either or, whatever you prefer. I suggest trying both. They should have a focal point. Close. You do 15 of them. They should have a focal point, leading lines, good silhouette shape, and value contrast, which is what we're going to talk about today. Okay. So I'll kind of do a demo of this in just a sec. So your thumbnails will then directly lead to a critique. So this is going to be in the discussions. I think it will be due next Friday, which would be the 3rd. And please, that's the latest you can turn it in. I suggest turning it in sooner than that, just so you can work ahead on your project. I'm going to be checking those discussions throughout the week. And basically what you'll do, you'll have your sketchbook page here. Oh, your thumbnail should be in your sketchbook. So here's your sketchbook. You have 15 thumbnails. You might be able to fit all 15 on one page. Maybe you might need 2 pages. Whatever they are, they got a focal point, some value in there. And I suggest labeling them 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 15. So you submit these thumbnails to the critique, okay? And I will look at your drawings. I suggest you guys to look at each other's thumbnails as well. And I will kind of say, oh, these are looking good. I like, 2, 4, and 5. I think those are your best ones, okay? I might do some drawing on top of your thumbnails to help you make them better a little bit. And then, so you'll take whichever 2 you like into Illustrator. You're going to make the final art in Illustrator. On Thursday, I'll do a demo of this process. So going from those thumbnails to the final art, okay? So the idea is you have these rough, kind of sketchy drawings. Your thumbnails should be about 2 to 3 inches on the longest side. You don't want them too big because then it's going to take too much time up. You can have them smaller if you're like really neat and draw with a really thin pen or really thin pencil. I find about 2 to 3 inches wide usually works. So you have these pencil drawings or drawings with pen, and they should be kind of sketchy, kind of rough, not finished artwork here. Again, representational or abstract. So after I kind of choose 3 or 4 that are really good, you'll choose your 2 best ones, and you have 2 pieces of final art. So you'll basically just trace over your shapes, clean up the drawing, make there be really good value contrast, which we will go over again, something I'm always looking for. And yeah, you'll make those 2 good looking finished pieces of final art in Illustrator. Then you'll do a written reflection. I think it's not worth many points. It's only worth 10 to 20 points out of 200. So, prioritize accordingly. But I just want to hear a little bit about this process overall. So did you enjoy thumbnailing? Did you enjoy abstract more? Did you enjoy representational? What sort of tools did you use for thumbnailing? How did you like using Illustrator? What tool did you use the most in Illustrator? What changed as you went from thumbnails to critique to final art? Things like that. So I just want to hear a little bit about your process. I think it says on the project description, like 150 to 250 words. So basically, 1 to 3 paragraphs. But here, use the vocab from this class. So use words like value. Do not use the word color. People still do that, even though we don't use color in this class. Use words like leading lines, focal point. Show me that you're, following along with the different concepts from the class. And then a PDF file is how you will save it. So There are videos in the playlist. I do a demo of the final art. I do a demo of how to save it as a PDF. And that's kind of the overall process. So this is the kind of the overall process we will use on all of the projects. So starting as a rough thumbnail sketch, doing a critique, and then taking it to make your final art in Illustrator. Are there any questions? Does this make sense for your steps that you're going to follow along with? Nope, and no theme. So if you want to, give yourself a theme, like, we did the barn and silo. If you want to, say a boat on the water, and how can you draw 15 versions of a boat going on the water? You mean like reference, inspiration, Tori? My suggestion to look at reference for inspiration is to look at photographs. So your own photographs, pictures that friends have taken, pictures that artists have liked. Try not to look at other artists' artwork, because you don't want to copy another artist's style or other artists' artwork. Try and look at photographs that may be able to use for inspiration. So yeah, there's no real theme for this drawing, for this project. We'll get more specific themes as we go forward and subject matter on project 3 and project 4. Can we reuse thumbnails? You mean like your barn and silo thumbnails? You can redraw them and like make them better based on, your first pass of thumbnails, but I don't want you to use those exact same thumbnails. But if you really want to, continue with the barn and silo theme, you can do that. Or you can do, house on a hill or cabin in the woods, or, dog running through a field. And you should be able to find, photo inspiration. And if you don't want to do representational, you can just stick with basic shapes and abstract shapes. So just use a simple shape like this for your focal point. Make it dark, kind of build up other shapes around it. Oh, and I think there is a requirement I put in here. Final art needs to have a certain amount of shapes in it. Has to have at least 15 shapes, 3 different types of lines, 1 shape pure black and 1 shape pure white. So that's basically just saying don't make this your final art too simple. Okay, so if you only have like 3 or 4 shapes in your final art, that's going to be a little too simple. I want you to show me that you have an understanding of the program, that you can create that variety of line, you can create unique shapes using the pen tool and things like that.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
For the discussion of the 150 to 200 words, hypothetically, if I had 300 words to say about my process, could I put 300 words in that post?
Yep. Please, yeah. I'm not counting the words. As long as you, cover, your creative process and use some of the vocabulary, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you.
And this PDF file. So let me show you guys. Any other questions on this in general? So yeah, I might suggest, just trying some abstract ones here, especially if you are uncomfortable with, how do I draw a person or a building or a landscape? Try to go for represent or abstract. I would rather have you guys get a really good composition that uses leading lines and the rule of thirds, a symmetrical composition without, even if it's not representational. That's not what I'm looking for. I just want to see that you have a grasp on these different concepts and you can go from rough sketch to final art. You can look at movie stills for inspiration. So like some of those ones we've looked at for like, where are they? Like we looked at ones like this here. So I could change this and do my own version of something like this. So it's basically, we talked about focal point, perspective lines pointing in, focal point in the middle. So maybe I change the frame. Come on. So thumbnail, pretty small. Maybe I change it to a vertical frame there. You got that background there. I can keep this as either a person or an abstract shape. I'm just kind of going abstract movement. And I like that composition, but I can use that. So I'm not copying this exactly, but I'm getting a general sense of the composition and using that for inspiration. I got square lights up there. I can put like circle lights here. They have all straight lines. Maybe I add in some like squiggly lines as well to vary up the line quality. And then I can change, the value here. So I have the most value contrast right there on the focal point. Does that make sense for finding some inspiration and ideas? Landscape photos will probably have some ideas as well. I would suggest looking through some of your own photos. You guys all have camera phones. If you ever went someplace cool, took some pictures, because you can pretty much copy your own photos exactly, because you came up with the composition, you came up with the subject matter, as long as there's a focal point, and then you can change things around in your drawing to add in more leading lines or whatever it may be. Nice, yeah, Jane, good idea. Okay, where were we? So yeah, coming up with those 15 thumbnails. Critique. Yeah, I will make this critique discussion early next week, and I'll send you guys a message when I do, probably Monday or Tuesday. I will post that. I'll just drop you guys a line to let you know it is live, and feel free to post your thumbnails in there whenever you get a chance. And again, I'll make suggestions and hopefully suggest your best one that you can use. Illustrator Final Art, I'll do a demo of that on Thursday, but there's already a demo on the YouTube videos if you want to look ahead at that. And then Reflection we discussed, but that PDF file. So what you will need for that is the template. And that's just a file here, Project O2 template. It's right here on section 2, a Project O2 template. You download it. It should look like this. So this is a document with 5 artboards, okay? So I have a demo for exactly how to save this as a PDF video for it. But if you can see here, thumbnails. This is where you'll put your thumbnails. Your name, you'll obviously put your name here. on each page. So this is going to be part of your presentation grade. So I've seen really, really good work saved and presented very poorly, and it reflects really bad on the work. Okay, so PDF is like just a really good standard file. It's used, across, Mac and PC. It's used really well for printing, if you ever take your artwork to be printed, and things like that. So thumbnails on these 2 pages, final art on this page, final art on this page, and then your reflection on this page. Jane, you should just focus on going through those videos, starting at square one of, figuring out how to use the basic tools. And then hopefully you can work up in time to get stuff to work on for project 2. So once you get this all in here, you'll just go file. No, it's save as Adobe PDF, and there's some settings in there I show you guys in the videos that you can follow along with. And then that's the PDF that you will submit. And here are some very good examples of student work. So this is from a couple quarters ago. So you can see here thumbnails. Here are the clearly displayed thumbnail drawings. This is a good idea of thumbnails. So you have the darkest value for the focal point, some leading lines, focal point, other shapes, patterns in there. So here there's some abstract and some representational. That is a good way to do it. Then here is the final art. So this is displayed, name, course, title, final art. Here is the final art. Clear focal point, good use of leading lines, interesting patterns, then written reflection. The only thing off here is this font should match the same font as the titles, okay? So that's part of the presentation. Show you a couple more of these. So the leases. So thumbnails here, 15. Ooh, blank artboard. Make sure you delete the extra artboard. I show you guys how to do that in the videos. This is a cool one. Good leading lines, really small focal point, using the rule of thirds there to place the focal point. And one abstract and one representational. Good value contrast here, leading lines, guiding our eye there. Cool silhouette shapes for the other buildings, and written reflection. Kayla, thumbnail, thumbnail. Final art, reflection. So does that kind of make sense what I'm looking for with this, hopefully? Any questions on this project? Okay, I'm assuming you guys are all good to go with this. All right. So yeah, don't forget, this is where the template file is. This is the version I made of the project. So if you just want to see basically how everything should be laid out, you can use that as a reference point. Okay. Okay, value contrast. This is probably the #1 most important way to make a focal point stand out. I basically want to see you guys trying to use value contrast on this first project. But I'm really gonna, like, this is kind of the introduction on this first project, but it's really gonna get pushed on the next 2 as well. So we're gonna come back and continue to talk about this for the rest of the quarter because it is so important. So before we start to talk about this, I want you guys to all draw with me a value scale. So just draw in your sketchbook right now 5 little boxes in a row. Has anyone ever done a value scale in another art class by chance? It's done lots of times in just kind of intro to drawing classes. Okay, so maybe you guys have done it a while ago. So this is just going to kind of, it's a way to display and practice drawing all our different values. So I use a very simplified value scale for this class. So this only has 5 stops on this value scale. So I like to give these all numbers that go along with it. So 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100. So this is basically the amount of black that is in each value of gray. Okay, so we're dealing in these shades of gray. So this is the amount of black. So 0 is pure white, so no black in there. 25% will be 25% gray. So whatever tool you usually draw with in your sketchbook, you should try and make a value scale right now with that tool, whether it's pen or pencil, whatever it is you draw with. 25, then you go half, so right there in the middle. And you basically want to try and get this even gradation from white to black. 75. Then to 100. So yeah, if you're drawing in pen, like depending on the pen, you might have to do like cross hatching to get the boxes darker. If you're drawing with pencil, it's going to be like how hard you're pushing down, how much you're laying it up, layering it up. But I kind of like this simplified value scale with just 5 stops. I find it a lot easier to use. And then having kind of these numbers and percentages associated with it allows us to talk about art in a little different way. So I can talk about your thumbnails and say, oh, right now you have a 50% value in your background. I think it would look better if it's 75. And also people that think a little more mathematically, if you have kind of more of a math brain, sometimes it can be useful to have numbers associated with these different values. So as you're working on your final art for this next project and pretty much all the projects, I want you to use all these values. Students oftentimes have a tendency to stay kind of right in this section. And that is not, as your work will look kind of bland if you're only using that limited amount of values. You want to make sure to use everything from pure white to 100% black. That'll give it a real good look to your artwork. And you can literally, like, as you're working on your final art in Illustrator, you can be like, do I have 0? Check. Do I have 25? Check. Do I have 50? Check. And do that for all the values to make sure you have that full value range. Another common mistake is lots of times people will use just light values, and that will cause it to look like washed out. Like it's kind of like it's a photograph that's overexposed. Like you don't get the dark values in there. So value contrast is something that humans will react to and our eyes are drawn to. We can't really help it. Our eyes are drawn to the area of highest value contrast. And what I mean by that is the area where the biggest difference in values are next to each other. Let's do this. So which one of these little spots are you going to look at first? 1 or 2? Yeah, exactly. Number 1. And the reason for that is because of the value contrast. So it has the biggest difference in value right next to each other. So you can look at this and there say there's 100 right next to a 0. So you do the math, that's the difference of 100. That's big. So this one here, this is like a 75 next to a 65. So this one is only a 10% difference. So there's just less contrast here than there is here. Contrast on number 1 is bold and stands out and is going to draw the eye. The contrast on number 2 here is very subtle. It's not going to stand out. It's not really going to pop to the viewer. So let's do another example here. Yeah, like our eyes are, we're just drawn to seeing that contrast. Like it's part of our survival instinct. That's what we see. That's what our eyes react to. We really can't help it. That's where we look. And so we want to control that in our artwork and make that really clear. So here's just a very simple abstract composition. Nothing's really standing out right now. Let's say I wanted to make this shape right here the focal point. Using value, how do I make one shape stand out and make it the clear focal point? What do you guys think? Probably the most simple way. Yeah. Color it in 100. Jane, good idea. Thick lines or dark color. So we're going to go with value. So now all I have to do is make this one 100% black. Now that one's going to stand out. Look at that one. It's really bold. It's like visually loud to us. And I can, fill in the rest of these ones with the 50%. And that black one is still going to stand out the most. The other ones have some value contrast, so they're standing out some from the background. But all these ones are 50% where that one is 100. So really simply, just making your focal point that really dark value is going to make it stand out. And then obviously if you were, going to make this into a full composition, you could add, weaving lines and other things as well to further reinforce it. So that's when you have a light value background. The same thing can happen with a dark value background. So these are all 50% gray on a 100% dark background to make one really stand out, to make that one that pure white against the background. So same concept. So you can, I usually like to kind of think, what am I going? Am I going dark against light or light against dark for my artwork? And again, it's probably good to try both of those if you're thinking about it that way as you're working on this next project. So so usually when I'm starting my thumbnails, I'll just start by, when I draw in that focal point, just coloring it dark with whatever tool I'm drawing with. And that should hopefully, be a really good way to just kind of start making sure everything is standing out. All right, let's do a representational example. It's okay if you were late. I'm recording this so you can rewatch the beginning of class afterwards. I'll get uploaded onto YouTube. We went over and talked a bunch about the requirements for the next project. All right, so we're doing a little bat flying through the air. Got the treetops down here. So oftentimes what I like to do is just kind of start with a 50% gray. It's right in the middle. And you can kind of just make some things darker and some things lighter. So let's make our bat a dark value. So what value should I make the bat here?
A like black almost, but not too dark, I think.
Mm-hmm. So you guys have the option. So it depends if I want this line work to still show or if I want it to just be a pure shape. So if I want it to be a pure shape, I would fill it in with 100% black. So back when we were talking about shape and line and what sort of style you want to have, that's where you want to make this decision. So we'll see here. I'll fill it into 100% black and we'll kind of see how it looks, and I'll adjust it slightly as well. So if I want to see that line work, I know the line work is solid black, so I can make it just slightly lighter. So that's like probably close to a 90% black there. I can even put some solid black on here as well. I know the line work's black. It's mostly solid black. Okay, so now to get maximum value contrast, what value should I make the moon there?
A much lighter contrast.
Yeah. Let's just go with 0. Exactly. Much lighter. Oops. I'm just going to erase this line. I'm gonna make this line. Now look how bold that is as it stands out. That really stands out. That's super clear as we're working here. So as I'm going through my little checklist here, do I have all my values? I have some solid black, that's good. I have 50%. I got my pure white, but I'm missing kind of these ones. So what value should I make the tops of the trees here? Yeah, probably 75 or around there. So now this is starting to come together. Now, how about the clouds? What should I do for the clouds there off in the distance? Yeah, try 25-ish, maybe 35, as long as it's close. So what do you guys think? Now this is starting to look like a finished, it's very simple, but still a finished drawing here, just because I went through this checklist and said, I have all of these values in here. Okay. Now, I might have said or implied that you always want the solid black right on your focal point. Well, I can still use solid black at other places in the composition as well. It doesn't have to just be on the focal point. So I can come and put some shadows down here in the trees. This black is good. It's not going to get too much attention because it's not butted right up against some white. So for some reason, I was like, I want some highlights in these leaves. I started putting these down in here. Now that really takes away from the focal point. That's getting too much attention down here. Why is there attention down in the bushes? This is not a drawing about trees. This is a drawing about a bat. So you don't want that down there. Even if you put that 25 in there, that's still a little bit too much. It's standing out too much. So, and then you can go in and do some simple math. So you got, 100 against 0. So that's your highest area of value contrast. Here you got 100 against 75. We got, 25 against 50. So 25 difference, 25 difference. Even the moon is, 0 against 50. So that's pretty big difference, which is good because we want the eye going right there. So we'll kind of notice that bright white, and then we'll really just be noticing that dark bat shape against the moon. Any questions on this example here? Or thoughts, comments? So this isn't just the one way to do this. You could come in and, do a different value. You can make the clouds dark, like a 75, and do, move these values around differently. But as long as you're kind of going through and you're saying, do I have all my values in there? The biggest one, if you get solid black and pure white in there, you're probably going to be good. And as long as those values are close together, it's a good way to start it. So I'll just do another little example here. Again, starting with that gray. I want this building here in the middle to be my focal point. So I'm just going to start and make that solid black. Now, if we get the dark value, the extreme dark value on there, it can be a really good way just to get you started off right. So already, like if that was, if I called that there and said, that's what I want for my composition here, that would be pretty good. There's pretty good value contrast. It's 50% background against the 100% building. So sometimes it can be cool. Jane wants to see an example with water. What sort of scene on water were you thinking, Jane? A waterfall. Oh my goodness, a waterfall. Yeah, let's do a waterfall here in just a sec. So sometimes it can be cool to have a very dark scene. So I got a lot of dark values here. I got a lot of solid black. I have solid black not just on the focal point. Some pretty dark clouds here in the sky. But if I want to draw attention to this building, I need to add something pure white on here. So what could I add to the building that could be pure white? Yeah, just do those windows. So thinking about adding those details on there as pure white is a good way to do it. And I can add windows to these buildings as well, but I don't want them to be pure white. That's too much value contrast there. I can do these at like 50%. And don't worry about what would be in reality. In reality, these windows would be really bright if I was really on a city street. But we're not, we're designing something to be different than reality, something to stand out, and we're making a statement with this. So think about how you can put either that white on or behind that object. So with the bat, we did the white behind, and you'll see this moon example all the time. Like I didn't make this up. So, and you start watching movies, looking at animations, you'll see people use moons behind things, clouds behind things to make it stand out with value contrast. And then same with things like this for windows. Yeah, and you can always come up with a logical story to match what your building is. So you can just say, oh, these are abandoned buildings over here. So even if you manipulate it and it's not what it's like in reality, you can, if you want to justify it, that there are ways to do it. So Jane wanted to see an example of a waterfall. Now this is where, let's do this in, use some reference images. So I can't, just picture a waterfall straight out of my head. Some artists can just draw everything out of their head. I can draw some things out of my head, but I haven't drawn a lot of waterfalls. So as I'm looking at this, I'm trying to see something that may have a clear focal point, that may have some value contrast already. So this one looks pretty cool. So again, we don't want to copy this exactly. We want to try and make it our own. But we can use it for inspiration. So this is a horizontal frame right now. So one way I oftentimes just change a photo to make it my own is just change the direction of the frame. So this is a vertical subject matter. It's a vertical waterfall. So to me, having a vertical frame kind of makes sense there. So I kind of want to put my focal point in there first. So maybe I'll put it lower down here along the bottom. I like where that water is kind of exploding as it falls down. The edges of those river kind of makes a nice leading line. So there's a lot of rocks over here, a lot of bushes. I just want to simplify these. So I'm just going to kind of make this into cool shapes rather than worrying about copying it exactly. So, when you're using that photo reference, we're not trying to draw realistically in this class. I'm not trying to draw a bunch of intricately moss covered rocks down here in the foreground. I want to keep it simple. Same with these trees. I might just simplify these trees to triangle shapes. I've seen other artists do that. So this is where you can steal ideas from other artists. Maybe put in some other shaped trees so we have some contrast as well. You can add something a little different than the photo. And then we got space up here to add a few more details. I want to leave it kind of empty-ish up here. I don't want to fill it up too much. Okay, so I kind of like that composition. So let's think about now how we add values to make sure the waterfall is our focal point. So I like starting with 50. So let's go with this, the bright white there, the bright white waterfall. So right there. So this is kind of the opposite of the other ones. Rather than starting with pure black, I'm going to start with pure white. And the river leading or coming from the waterfall, I'm going to make it a light value, but not as light. So what value should I make these hills here, since they're surrounding the white waterfall, what value should those cliff sides be? Yeah, anywhere with that really dark, really, really dark. So I'll start with I'm at like a 90-ish here. So now as I just kind of look at that, that's working pretty well. Let me lighten this just a little bit. I want to see if it works to make these rocks here in the foreground solid black. So far, that's working okay. I'll just go a little bit darker. So now up here in these shapes, these trees and clouds, I hardly have any value contrast compared to the sky. So the sky's at 50. This is just about a 60 or 70 for these other shapes. So these other shapes are less consequential. They're background elements. Even that sun, I don't want that sun to stand out too much. So I'm not going to make it a bright white shape. What I will do is I'll just come put a little solid black right here next to the waterfall. I could say this is a rock or it's some texture. Whatever this is, you say it's a shadow. Having that solid black right there, even if I don't, again, I'm not thinking about this logically necessarily. I'm thinking about how do I get in value contrast there? Want a little texture on the water, so I'm coming with just a little bit of different value there. We can put a few highlights here through the water for leading lines. So started from that inspiration, but it changed quite a bit. And so, kind of as you're drawing from a reference photo, sometimes after a while, it's helpful to put that photo away. So then you can just change it, and make it into your own piece of artwork as well. But the main thing, I have black against white right here in this section, right there on the focal point. And that should be the main thing you're using to make that focal point stand out. So it starts on your thumbnails, usually just plopping in a really dark value when you're doing those rough sketches. And then hopefully as you move on to the final art, it will, you'll increase it and make that value contrast even more clear. Okay, any other questions on value contrast or project 2?
I have a question about the focal point. What's like a good way to bring out the focal point on like those types of painting drawings and stuff where it's like a bunch of different shades?
So yeah, that's basically what we were talking about, is just using that light value against dark value. When did you come into the class?
Like 20 minutes ago, maybe. Not that long, maybe 15, I think.
So did you see this version? Do you see our bat?
Yeah. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So it's really just having the bright white, the lightest value against the darkest value. So we did a value scale. Where did that go? So we did this value scale from 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100% black. And wherever there's bright white against solid black, that's what's going to get the most attention.
Oh, that makes sense.
So in these little simple abstract versions, this black shape against the white background gets attention, or this white circle against the black background will get attention.